Hello. Welcome to my channel Touching Stories. You're about to hear an amazing story about love and unexpected decisions. Enjoy watching. Having worked an seemingly endless shift in a city clinic, Jack was looking forward to a long sleep. His legs were buzzing. His head refused to accept any new information. He did not expect a delicious hot dinner from a caring wife. After all, Annie just took over her shift with a frantic schedule. The couple rarely met at home more often within the walls of the clinic, which for a long time became their home. She was always full of passion. Strong couples broke up. New relationships were built. Dramas played out and passions boiled. Many of Jack's colleagues got married after an affair in a medical institution. He himself met his future wife while still in medical school. It seemed as if fate had brought them together, because Jack and Annie were well aware of their professional aspirations and did not interfere with each other's careers. Their daughter Laurent was born to them when the woman was almost 32. She mastered her specialty and then devoted herself to the family. And she gave her husband the opportunity to realize himself as a traumatologist. The girl went to a kindergarten for children, health workers, clinics, and parents who were afraid to separate from their families for a long time could visit their beloved child at any time. Jack doted on his daughter. From early childhood, the girl was surrounded by people with a good education, friends, moms and dads, and grew up inquisitive and spoiled by attention. Medical education gave his wife an idea about all the subtleties of the birth of a new life. But he himself considered the birth of his daughter a miracle, no matter what heights he reached in the professional field. The existence of Lauren was his main achievement. The next morning, Jack was left at home alone with his daughter and didn't work. There was no need to call a nanny. The parents tried to devote the weekend to the girl and show her their love. The father wanted to tinker with Laura himself and suggested taking a walk in the city park. The weather was pleasant with spring warmth. Jack and his daughter put on light jackets, a hat, sneakers, and left the house. And we will ride on the carousels. The girl did not let up all the way. "Of course, dear, for anyone who likes it," he replied, looking at his daughter with a smile through her soft hair. "Will we feed the squirrels?" she asked enthusiastically. "If they come down to us." Laura knew about the busyness of her parents and did not complain, because they always tried to be there during the shift at the clinic, visited her several times a day, and treated her to goodies. On weekends, the family would certainly arrange trips to interesting places to entertain their daughter and not make her feel lonely. The girl ran for a long time with other children on her own green grass, playing catch-up. Then Jack bought her a kite, and together they tried to tame the mane of the April wind. After an active holiday, they had a bite of ice cream by the pond and fed brave ducks, who were not at all afraid to pin up their beloved arse close to people. She considered a role model and often tried to repeat it even in small things. She was immensely proud of his profession, his kindness with which he interacted with his patients in kindergarten. The baby boasted non-stop in front of other children, even though each of them was a child from a family of doctors. "It's good that I have a daddy." She reached out with her hands to her father, kissed him on the cheek. "And Jim and Cassandra from my group grow up without dads. It is very sad." Jack was thrilled by such tenderness. "And I love you, my little star. You are the most precious thing that we have with my mother." Lauren dreamed of growing up as soon as possible and also becoming a doctor, helping people to be a sorceress. She believed that it was with her magical powers that her parents could cure diseases and make others happy, allowing them to return home sooner. Jack watched with a shadow of sadness as his sociable daughter easily made new acquaintances with other children and smiled carelessly at every discovery. At such moments, he involuntarily returned to the memories of his childhood. He recalled how he himself had fun at the age of 6, for which he received scolding from his parents. He could not boast that he grew up in an atmosphere of carelessness and care. Rather, he had to overcome many difficulties, and sometimes Jack got really sick. It was worth delving into the memories too much. But for this, the man had good reasons. Rushed to him, Laurie brought back her father, who was thinking about herself to reality. "Daddy, Daddy, you are here." The girl leaned close to his face. "Have you eaten?" Noticeable anxiety in large eyes. "Yes?" "Yes, dear. Just wondering, what is it? Can I buy a sweet soda? I want to go myself. Do you trust me?" The girl confidently extended her hand forward, waiting for Dad to agree in a small bill to fall into his palm. Jack looked around, spotted the nearest store, and thought about it. The grocery store was across the street. Nearby is a zebra with fresh paint. Yes, and Laurie was familiar with the rules of the road and always acted deliberately. The girl knew how to count money, not being afraid to communicate with strangers and count change. At times like these, Laurie looked extraordinarily important. Realizing that she coped with the affairs of adults and returned with her head held high. "You can. Just be careful in front of the road and stand carefully and look around. Understood?" "Yes, you know I can do it." The man watched with a smile as the joyful daughter solemnly walked to the pedestrian crossing and successfully crossed to the other side of the street. At that moment, the phone in his pocket interrupted, announcing incoming calls, and Jack was distracted. "After all, I understand that we are best friends, but you don't call your wife as much in a day as I do." He laughed when he heard his friend's complaints on the phone. "Yeah, it's so crazy. I'm surprised you didn't get pulled out of your day off. I'm actually on the case." For a couple of minutes, Jack's attention was diverted by the chatter of a friend. He turned towards the store, wondering how his little one was doing there. It was difficult for a man to put up with the fact that his child, who used to be dependent on him in everything, is gradually moving away, gaining independence and the desire to cope with something to the delight of his parents. He approved of each new undertaking of his daughter, but was there to help complete or correct what had been started. It seemed to Jack that in some situations it was too early to give Lauren freedom of action, and sometimes he simply resisted this, afraid of becoming useless for his daughter. He knew that every parent must go through this stage. But it didn't get any easier. At this very moment, Laurie was walking around the shop windows. A mini-market rises above it with an abundance of various goods. The girl did not immediately orientate herself in the labyrinths of the store, but soon, with a satisfied smile, she went to the cashier and took a queue along with the adults. In front of her, among those waiting, stood an elderly man in fairly understandable clothes. Even in this warm weather, he was wearing an old sheepskin coat and a cap with ear flaps. The girl grimaced at what an unpleasant smell emanated from the man, and she decided that he was a homeless person. When a young cashier looked at him with a tired look and punched through the goods with a displeased look, the man realized to his horror that there was no money in his pocket. "How will you pay?" the seller asked impatiently, looking at the queue gathered behind. "I'm sorry, honey. I can't find the money." "Dropped it or what?" he answered with a guilty look. "Yes, of course. I know what you're going to do here. You decide to put pressure on pity like you lost money, but I forgive you. I give the purchase as a gift. If there is nothing to pay, leave," angrily, she snapped. "Girl dear," the confused man did not let up. "Do I have money? Wait a minute." Tramp began to pat his pockets and put the contents of his pockets on the counter. "All sorts of junk." "Oh, put it away now. The products of other buyers are also placed here. Do you think they will take something after that?" The cashier was indignant again and already looked behind in search of the guard on duty that shift. "I repeat, pay or not, delay the queue." "Let's live there," someone answered behind, supporting the girl. Laurie cringed at the loud cry of the cashier, who clearly decided to take her anger out on the unfortunate man. He was so upset that he almost burst into tears. His voice trembled the last time he argued with the girl. It was clear that he was not playing and pretending that there was no money. For Laurie, who did not hear a loud appeal from her parents, such an attitude towards an older person seemed inexplicable. She was struck by the boorish behavior of the young girl, and the tramp was sorry to tears. The guard, who arrived in time for the nod of the cashier, took the homeless person aside and began to find out something from him. Laurie, unable to bear the injustice, decided that he urgently needed help. She put down her soda bottle and ran out of the store looking for her dad. Jack was an all-powerful hero to her. He certainly settled everything and will not allow anyone to offend that poor uncle. Laurie found her dad smiling as he tucked his phone into his jacket pocket. After finishing the conversation with Victor, "Dad, come with me. Their aunt offends grandfather. Everyone swears at him, but he lost money. Help him." The girl desperately pulled her father by the hand to the road, fearing not to be in time. She was afraid to leave him alone with those unpleasant people. Jack finally managed to get a clear answer from his daughter about the situation in the convenience store. He realized what had happened and decided to help the homeless. By the time they entered the store, the stranger was already crying, driven off by the vicious staff. "Oh, hello." Jack turned to the guard in black uniform. "I will pay for the purchase of this man. Just leave him alone, please." "Who do you need the most?" he snapped, obviously dissatisfied with the fact that someone stood up for the homeless. "As I understand it, this man did not steal anything, and therefore you have no right to detain him. Or should I contact someone from your administration? Isn't it easier for you to return to rest and not waste your energy on trifles?" The effect Jack was hoping for worked. Stay away from the homeless. He paid for his purchase and also gave the cashier a chocolate bar. "Girl, don't be angry. It doesn't suit you. Here's a treat for a break." The cashier was clearly pleased with the attention of a well-dressed stranger. But he left the last word. "Why do you encounter?" Was not sure that he was homeless, but his appearance was extremely unpleasant, which spoke of a difficult life. Excited, Laurie stood next to her father, her gaze fixed on him and the stranger. She didn't understand why Dad stayed by his side, but the sight of the unfortunate man again brought an unpleasant burning sensation in her chest. Rummaged through her memory where he knew the tramp, but he couldn't remember where he knew the tramp, but he couldn't. "Do you need to buy something else?" quietly he asked. "I can go back there myself. You don't have to see them. Today is just unlucky, but you don't deserve to be treated like that." "No, thank you," said the stranger. "With your voice, you have already done enough for me." The men exchanged a couple more phrases, but the conversation did not go well. Jack didn't know if he should have kept trying and forcing himself on the unfortunate man, but he was in no hurry to leave. His gaze involuntarily fell on the wrinkled hands of the stranger. Jack's face changed abruptly, feigning bewilderment. On the left hand of the tramp, all the large purple scars in the form of a crescent are clearly visible. The man flinched at the sudden discovery. Now he knew exactly who was sitting 1.5 meters away from him. Moreover, he knew where he got this terrible scar, cut himself with glass while fishing almost 30 years ago. Jack couldn't say a word. Everything swam before my eyes and seemed unreal. How could they meet like this? His fate so unpredictable. Men did not know how to behave, how to react. After all, there was a little impressionable daughter nearby. Looking at the familiar, visible scar of a tramp, he was lost in memories of his distant childhood. Jack was born into a wealthy family. His mother didn't just marry well. The woman's father is not the last person in the city. He himself found a party for his daughter and was able to profitably marry her off. Nicole was brought up as a reliable and short companion for a business person. She had good taste, understood art, could carry on small talk, and was not stupid. William could not have found a better wife. Jack's father was remembered by him as a man of strict morals. He did not tolerate objections. Nicole understood this and did not argue with her husband, and in return she lived a prosperous life and did not know the need. A woman had to put up with many oddities of her husband, experience an unfair attitude, sometimes neglect. She knew that it was not worth hoping for fairy tale love. But despite the difficult nature of his son, William did not offend her. He only taught the family to live by certain rules. And then conflicts could be avoided. Son, be attentive to your surroundings. Jack's father warned, adjusting the butterfly on his neck. The guys you meet today will become your companions or even friends in the future. Always watch your words. Think ahead. Okay, Dad, I won't let you down. Clever beyond his years, Jack at the age of 6 attended many social events, met important people, endured their fake smiles and handshakes. Father in high society felt like a fish in water, and the boys and their mother. This whole game of friendship with strangers was difficult. Nicole loved expensive outfits and knew how to attract attention, but living in an environment of deceit was too hard for her. She hoped that her husband would not deprive their son of childhood, give him time for childishness and madness without involving him in business too early. She did not know that William had big plans for him and tried not to disappoint him. The boy in colors could imagine his future, stable, secured, serious. In just one moment, everything dissolved like a mirage. He thought that his parents would always be there. But one morning he woke up in a house full of strangers and Mom and Dad were not there. Honey, I'm sorry. The nanny sat down in front of 6-year-old Jack. Your parents had an accident last night. Cute boy. They didn't survive. They went to heaven. Can't be. Are you kidding? The sleepy boy stared at the woman, wiping tears from his cheeks. Mom is now in the dining room, but Dad is not. It hurts, I understand. But now you're an orphan? No, Holly, it's not true. The child broke. It didn't fit in his head that his parents could just pick up and disappear, leave him alone. It was the first time he had come so close to death. He had never even seen a dead person. All rationality was gone. Jack couldn't believe it. He clutched at the sleeves of his shirt and broke in his voice. Numerous people gathered pityingly, shook their heads, and Jack could no longer distinguish their faces. He forgot the manners he had been taught. All he wanted was a mother's embrace and his father's voice. Jack remembered now the hard day of his parents' funeral in his big house, filled with people with offended faces. There was a smell of expensive perfume of numerous guests. Portraits of father and mother are living flowers, which were placed throughout the house. Jack still has not forgotten that terrible feeling of longing and fear which he was seized with for a long time. Who will be there now? Who is responsible for it? What about the future for which his father prepared him? 6-year-old Jack was left completely alone in a vast, incomprehensible world. He did not have close relatives, and distant ones did not come for him and take on the chores of someone else's child, deciding to transfer him under the care of the state. The boys were threatened with life in an orphanage. It's amazing how cruel fate can be sometimes. It only remained to accept and wait for a new round, which could radically change everything. For a while, Jack was among the abandoned orphans. He had to taste life in one of the orphanages. Those months that he spent among the children of dysfunctional parents seemed like hell. He was raised by a strict but fair father, who never used foul language or spoke disrespectfully of his wife. And once in an environment where children from an early age knew how to swear, steal, and get their own way, Jack was ready to go crazy. He did not know how to communicate with others, how to fight back, how to behave so as not to receive a portion of cuffs from the local bullies again. The child care worker worked with Jack to the last, helping the child find a new family. She was always there, comforting the frightened child, knowing where he was. Children who were born in hellish conditions had an easier time adapting than those who were raised in love by their parents. And with respect, what will happen to me? I don't want to live there. There are evil children. The boy cried, having lost all courage. They fight and bite. Nobody is friends with anyone. The teachers don't listen. They know that they offend me, but they do not intercede. I want to see my dad. He has to protect me. Your uncle is fighting for you, the woman said, hugging little Jack. Your dad's friend is trying to adopt you, and I help him. Not long left, be patient. You will have a new family. Peter, who rarely appeared in William's house during his lifetime, did not have much wealth and could not boast of a prestigious education or useful contacts. The men rarely saw each other. Jack didn't even recognize him when they met. Not understanding why, of all his father's friends, it was this unfamiliar man who decided to take him away. It took a lot of effort for Peter to get custody. The man visited the boy so that he would get used to him and have an adult nearby whom he could rely on. You may not remember me, but I saw you very young, he smiled kindly, sitting at a distance from Jack, who was looking at him with curiosity. Peter didn't want to ask how the boy got along with other orphans, once again reminding him of a new difficult life. He wanted to win over the child to himself, to remind him of the past calm time, to give confidence in the future. You have been with us, confirmed little Xenia. He already knew that this uncle wanted to adopt him, and he could not wait to live in a separate house again and have his own room. He wanted to have at least someone whom he could rely on like Mom and Dad in the past, to whom he can turn even with trifling requests, and he will know that he will be heard. After a long fuss with the documents and a long acquaintance, Peter finally took Jack home. He and his wife Irma dreamed of their child for many years, but God limited them in this. They lived soul to soul, resigned to their problem, but did not lose hope. They knew that they would become good parents and be able to make Jack happy, as he made them. Come on, Boulder, Irma said to the boy, meeting him on the porch. She immediately liked him. The woman was short in stature with a thick braid and with existing eyes. At first, Jack was afraid that these nice people who received him with such warmth would turn out to be strict. But that did not happen. Peter and Irma were soft in educational measures, but the boys who loved to do little pranks. I did not want to go too far and let down foster parents. Eat calmly. Take your time, the woman said, stroking the frightened Jack through his short hair. The boy behaved somewhat wildly. He was constantly alert, accustomed to the fact that the shelter had to defend itself. Delicious food was taken away in no time. Some put up with it and shared with the Holligans voluntarily, and Jack immediately stuffed his goodies into his mouth, whole. Irma was a wonderful mother to the boy, affectionate, condescending, generous, even though they were poor. She often reminded Jack of his own mother, always left to protect him from William's angrily at times. But he was more drawn to Peter, whose character was the complete opposite of his father's. With him, the boy could frolic as much as he liked. The man was never against his company. He took him with him on short trips to work, taught him how to fish, how to deal with the household, how to give change to bullies so that it was disrespectful, how to be the first to talk to a girl. Jack did not hesitate to run to his foster father and tell him about all his victories or defeats. He shared everything that lay on his heart. For 10 years, Xenia lived with the Greensby spouses as a beloved son, to whom his adoptive parents took a liking with all their heart and soul. How did you get out? Irma said, hugging her 16-year-old son and embarrassing her with a kiss on the cheek on the middle of the street. Sonia will catch up with your father. You are already looking at your bride, but you don't tell me. Everyone whispers to him like girls at a dance. Well, Mom, the guy blushed, trying to translate the topic and recalled some kind of nonsense. Irma and Peter gave Jack all their love and warmth, and then he felt happy needed. And most importantly, once again I felt stability in my future. He was passionate about medicine. He dreams of becoming an excellent doctor and treating his colleagues' parents for free, thanks to its revenue and reputation. Get ready, son. His father clapped on the shoulder, expressing support. Of course, we will find the money. Just don't give up. It will be difficult, but we will break through, right? Of course, Dad. I won't let you down. I won't back down. You know, the boy said hotly. In that carefree period of life, Xenia thought that he had too many thoughts in his head because he wanted everything at once. He so dreamed of growing up, learning, starting to work, so as not to sit on the neck of his parents, who went out of their way to provide for him with everything. But at the same time, he madly wanted to have fun with friends, learn from girls, go on dates and kiss. Jack met every day with a smile and inspiration, approaching his cherished dream. Only now the sudden illness of Irma dampened his ardor. This was repeated again. His mom eludes him. "Your wife has cancer. The third stage," the oncologist said in a flat voice to the male half of the Greensby family. "That's not true," Pavel replied. It was the first time Jack had seen his stepfather so confused and so broken. I wanted to hug him, console him, assure him that everything would be cured, that the trouble could be overcome. "It's not all bad, but get ready. Treatment will be long and difficult. You will have to accept that your wife and mother may become a person you do not know. She may refuse treatment. She will lash out at you and curse. This happens quite often. You must be persistent and not give up even when she has no strength left to fight." The family took the traumatic news hard. Irma was too soft and vulnerable for such a cruel diagnosis. There was a tense atmosphere at home. At first, everyone smiled at each other, jeering. They promised that things would change soon. But the further time passed, the more disappointed she became. Everyone was afraid to voice out loud that they might lose their faith. The woman cried a lot. She no longer had the strength to cry, but she could not stop. Treatment required energy. Peter agreed to overtime and work in his firm. Took on other people's responsibilities. Jack studied hard at school, trying not to give his parents unnecessary worries. Took over all household chores. Entertained Mom. The hardest thing was to be alone with a sick mother. The guy was angry with himself that he was not old enough, that he was not hired, that he could not lighten the effort, and considered himself useless. "Don't blame yourself," Irma said, hugging her son when he sat down on her bed. Jack couldn't stand her gaze. "Mom, you will definitely fix it. Everything, I promise. You should see how I graduated from high school and entered the institute. I haven't achieved anything yet. Hold on, please," he whispered, throat constricted from tears. Time passed. Peter worked tirelessly from exhaustion. The man was barely dragging his feet. But he was well paid for the extra shifts. He was happy even if the messenger worked, often handing over some papers to partners at the request of his superiors. At home, it became easier to breathe. Irma had some fun getting the necessary treatment. Although she was still worried that something would come out of all this crazy waste of money and words of consolation, loved ones and doctors. "My dear," her husband whispered to her, returning from work, "everything will work out. You will see we are happy people. Our son is smart and obedient. The authorities appreciate me and we will defeat your infection." "I can hardly believe it, Peter," Irma replied in a weak voice. "But there is hope. In the end, the forecasts are not bad. At the last meeting with the doctors, improvements were noticed, although the procedures were recommended not to be interrupted. Otherwise, this infection would return on an unexpected scale." Jack increasingly saw smiles on the faces of his parents and himself quietly rejoiced, thinking everything is back to normal. Sometimes he even managed to drag his mother out of bed for a short walk. She loved their cozy courtyard, the smell of grass, the singing of birds, and the guy wanted to give those few new moments of joy to show that she can still enjoy again carelessly what is dear to her. The usually quiet Peter at that time returned from the offices of squabbling and nervously pacing the rooms in an attempt to calm down. The alarmed household did not dare to ask what had happened, waiting for him to tell everything himself. Irma was exhausted, watching the man puffing, and still could not stand it. "Peter, so what happened? You're on edge. I can't look at you." "Everyone sailed," he muttered, not looking at the family. "Our company is sinking. Today came the audit from the tax. They turned the office upside down, raked in all the documentation in the box, seized all the computers. We'll look for violations. Everything seems to be serious. I have not attended this yet. Everything is so bad, Jack intervened, not yet fully understanding what his father is so afraid of. Peter didn't answer right away. He seemed to have gone deep into himself, thinking about something. His wife and son silently waited for an answer, trying to look at the man. In every office there are violations, even small ones. But if you dig deeper, everything will come up. Judging by the face of our boss, he has something to be afraid of. Checks and proceedings can drag on for a long time, and we do not have time. He looked seriously at Irma, who understood what this could threaten them with. Tomorrow I will find out how catastrophic the situation is, and it looks like I will look for another job. The rest of the day the family didn't talk much. All plunged into heavy thoughts, imagining the most terrible outcome. Jack, again eager to do something, somehow change the situation. Show yourself in such a way as to pull the family out of the crisis. The guy dreamed of restoring his mother's health. It will be, and the rest will follow. But Peter didn't show up for work the next day. The Greensby family was awakened by a loud knock on the door, and a loud demand from law enforcement officials to appear before them accused of major tax fraud. The man did not immediately understand that it was about him. It was screwed up right away. It was worth opening the front door. Jack ran forward but was held back. "Peter, what's going on?" A frightened Irma got out of bed with difficulty and hobbled into the hallway, holding onto the wall. Peter was taken to the police station in front of dear people and curious neighbors who immediately accepted all the gossip about the supposedly exemplary family man, about the financial fraud of a large company. The media became aware immediately. The news spread across all local channels, newspapers, and social networks, where anyone could express their indignation, calling Peter the last words. These people didn't even know the man. They needed a scapegoat, as did the management of the company. The scale of the scandal was so huge that it was soon talked about outside the city. The incident could not but affect the state of Irma, who almost fainted when her husband was unceremoniously taken away from the house in handcuffs. Jack did not go to school, calling an ambulance, and sat in his mother's room until she came to her senses. "Where is father? What's the news?" she asked, barely opening her eyes. "I don't know yet. Mom, please try to stay calm. Shouldn't you be worried?" The woman immediately burst into tears, covering her face with her hands. Well, how not to worry? How not to worry when arbitrariness is happening? He was framed. How can you not understand? Irma wailed, not feeling the caring hands of her son. He's an honest man. He never took someone else's penny and looked askance at anyone. It was they who decided to get out and made it extreme. How to prove it? Where to find protection? With every word of a mother. Jack grew darker. He again faced with what he was beyond his strength and what he could not influence in any way. Returning home, Irma was temporarily distracted from her own illness. All her thoughts were occupied with the fate of her husband. She turned to lawyers, offered them all their savings in order to get her husband out of custody, but to no avail. The tax authorities, having learned about the violations, firmly clung to the company, not giving even a chance to escape punishment to everyone related to fraud. Refusal to take medication was a fatal mistake for Irma. The woman burned down in front of her son in a matter of weeks. Jack hadn't been able to wake her up in the morning, just 3 days before Peter's trial. Mom. No, wake up, I beg you. Open your eyes." Her boyfriend shook with horror, looking at the lifeless body of his mother. "He's been through this before. He couldn't lose his family again. Do not leave me. No, please, wake up." But Jack's pleas went unanswered. Rare guests came to the house to support him. Many turned their backs on a decent family after the fraud scandal. They were no longer pitied or respected, suspecting that Peter's son was just as hopeless a deceiver and cunning as his shameless father. Irma's husband, who had been in detention until the trial, was crushed by the news of his wife's death. He screamed, sobbed, beat the walls, and was ready to crush anyone in his path. But it did not become easier for him. A man in an instant lost everyone who was dear. He will never see his wife and son again. After all, most likely he will again be distributed to an orphanage, and he himself will lose his freedom for many years, and all because of their gullibility. The man was so happy with the trust of his superiors, not suspecting that with the help of him dishonest hands, the leaders planned to get out if they were discovered. Peter had been framed calculatedly and skillfully. His public defender could not compete with the lawyers of the bosses. The man understood that he could not escape imprisonment, but he hoped for the leniency of the court. The meeting was public. The press was present, trying to turn inside out every word he said that day. They were ruthless to all participants in the process, not afraid to discuss in their articles the death of the wife of one of the accused. At times like this, Peter was furious. He struggled to control his emotions when the prosecutor put forward the version that Peter knew about the illegal activities of the company, and moreover, agreed to participate in this for large bonuses, because he hoped to cure Irma. In your opinion, I risked so much for the pennies that any sane person received. Having decided on this, I would have demanded payment for a full course of treatment for my wife. I lost my entire family to an unfair accusation. And you are the defendant. Calm down. The judge strictly urged the man to stop, but Peter had more to say. He could hardly contain his anger, so that the media would not again dash off lousy articles about his uncontrolled aggression and about what else such an unpredictable person could be capable of. Despite the sincerity of Peter's words, the court found the evidence of his innocence not sharp enough. The man was sentenced to 11 years along with the rest of the defendants. Now the hope in his eyes is gone forever. He could not reconcile himself to his fate, knowing that his son was left there alone and was again experiencing a terrible tragedy. The man didn't care about prison life. He was depressed because he was not allowed to attend Irma's funeral and say goodbye to her for the last time. The events of the last few weeks were still in my head. Everything turned upside down too abruptly. He seemed to live not his own life, not suspecting that one day he could lose everything. Journalists visited Peter several times. The man thought this was his chance to tell the truth, to pay tribute to the memory of the deceased beloved wife, to apologize to the abandoned son, who is again alone with the cruel world. Only the journalists were not interested, however. They wanted to squeeze more details out of the man about the dirty affairs of the company, believing that the simpleton would surrender over grief and would be more willing to make contact than his respectable leaders. They still hoped for a review of the case, and the lawyers forbade them to receive visitors and discuss their case with anyone. Peter was allowed to see his son only once. The representative of the guardianship authorities was not happy to accompany the guy to prison, but that was his job. "Dad!" The boy's voice became muffled with tears as soon as he saw his father, who had already managed to visit the prison mess. The man had a split lip and swollen eyes. "What did they do to you? Should you be protected? Any person will understand that you were framed. You didn't deserve it." Peter saw Jack grow up. New difficulties later hardened him, and now the emotions were at the limit. The guy did not want to part with his father. He could not even see him on the other side of the glass in the meeting room, realizing that Dad will spend the next years locked up like a beast. "I didn't want you to see me like this," Peter admitted. "It's not that bad, don't worry. We can't skip dates. After all, you will not be allowed to appear here again. I will write. And you write to me about everything. Even if I'm far away, I'm always with you. I will not forget about you, or about my mother, not for a second. I love you, son. Do not forget about it." That day they saw each other for the last time. Jack was resettled in an orphanage. This time, in a stranger. Life was easier there. The guy even made friends with some guys. I fell in love for the first time, but it was difficult to adapt. He could not imagine that a new round of fate would throw him back to those times when he was alone in this world. You will become a doctor. Just don't give up. Senior Comrade Eaton advised him. Those who graduated from here are not always lucky to live with normal parents. You were well brought up. Don't argue. I'll take care of you too, Jack smiled at the guy. I'll pull up your studies and you can get a decent education. And so it happened. The guy strove for his goal and did not forget about his friend. They have been in contact until now and worked in the same clinic. Only a comrade unlearned to be a nurse. Both were happy with their choice. After all, Eaton did not even hope to achieve something in this life. Jack recalled that it was more difficult for him to return to the shelter the second time than the first. As a child, he waited for a strong adult who would give him care, become a support, indicate in which direction to move. And at 17, he himself had to force himself to move on. Do not let go of the dream, do not lose hope. Achieve the release of the Father and reunite with him. To take your place in the sun. The guy diligently learned not to waste money on entertainment, did not miss a couple, did not look for easy ways, and did not quarrel with teachers. He was grateful to fate for having brought him a valuable brisk but sensitive and understanding. Sometimes you think that you didn't deserve you even close. The woman said to her husband in those rare moments when they both crossed paths in the evening after the shift. Our happiness seems incredible. After all, not all couples are the same. We both deserve it. We are working on ourselves and will give our angel only the best. She should know what parental attention means, answered Jack, giving his wife a caress. But in addition to warm memories of Peter, the unpleasant sensations that he experienced when he did not receive an answer to his letters from his father surfaced in his head. At first, the guy wrote steadily in detail, telling any changes in life, and skirmishes with the guys about new friends, about sympathy, about the competition in which he won first place. He was interested in his father's affairs, his health. Is it possible to appeal? And can they see each other? Every week without a letter from Peter was depressing for Jack. He was terribly worried about the fate of his father and did not know what was happening to him. Why doesn't he write? Why does he ignore him? Later, the excitement was replaced by anger and disappointment in the Pope. Jack didn't want to believe that his father didn't need him, but he was surrounded by children abandoned by their parents of their own free will. And he was adopted. Leaving him was easier. Are you bored? Eaton touched his friend's shoulder after lights out, as he sat by the window rereading his own letters to his father, who never dared to send. He didn't want to send them out into the void and wonder if Peter read them at all. No, answered Jack with anger. He doesn't need me. Why should I think about him? Eaton sighed. I don't understand your feelings. I don't remember my parents. I was 2 when they lost their parental rights. The older brothers were assigned to another shelter, and I was sent here. The guardianship authorities hoped that my little one would be adopted faster. But as you can see, the guy spread his hands. Do not be angry with your father. You never know what could have happened to him. Suddenly he was transferred to another colony, and the address was lost or something worse. But he was so offended by his father that he could not even come up with a single decent excuse for him. It took him a long time to come to terms with the lost interest in himself. Emotions overwhelm him and try harder to grow up as a decent person. After all, behind him he no longer had support. There was no unconditional love and mentor. Now Peter was sitting in front of Jack, completely unrecognizable. If not for the scar, he might not have guessed that the long-lost adoptive father was sitting in front of him. Under his gaze, the man fussed and looked at the kind stranger paying for his purchase. Your daughter? Peter asked, looking at the well-bred, clear little girl who sounded the alarm. Yes. Laurie is my daughter and your granddaughter, Father. Jack said with difficulty. It's me, Jack. I recognized you by the scar. The homeless man carefully looked at the stranger, examining his face, and recognized the look. The older man's shoulders shook. He lowered his face and shielded himself with the sleeve of his overcoat. Suddenly he got up, about to leave because he was not ready to meet his son. Not now, not like this. The guilt was too great to see your adult child healthy, successful, starting his own family. Can't you leave like this? Just look at me. I don't care what's wrong with you. How do you look? I'm your son. I'm the only one left with you. Or has it become a habit to leave? Peter stopped. It was hard for him to bear the judgment in Jack's voice, but he was right. He could be angry all he wanted. He had reason to hate his father. Daddy, don't be angry. Lauren took her father's hand, pressing with his hand. He remembered that his daughter was nearby, that he could be frightened, that she didn't need to see his emotions. It's okay, honey, don't worry. I was a little upset, but it's nothing. Coped with emotions. Jack, he suggested that his father talk in a different setting over dinner for the reception. But the old man protested. Look at me, people shied away immediately. I won't be welcome anywhere, he said, ashamed of himself. Not this way. He represented a meeting with his son. And in general, I stopped thinking a long time ago that I was worthy to communicate with him. Jack led father and daughter to the car, brushing aside every excuse he could make. If you are ashamed to show yourself in public, we will put you in order. My family won't mind. And you might as well take a shower. How about something with clothes? Peter relented. In my heart, I am glad that his son did not dramatize, swear on the street, and insisted on his own, showing that there is still a chance to establish communication. Laurie looked with curiosity at the elderly uncle, whom her dad kept looking at. The girl did not understand how they knew each other. Why didn't Dad tell her about Grandpa before? 1,000,000 questions were spinning in the child's head, but she did not dare to voice any yet, fearing that Dad would be even more upset. When Peter stood before his son in his clean clothes draped over his skinny shoulders, they both lowered their eyes. An elderly man was embarrassed by what he had brought himself to by constant drunkenness from the inside and the body, and his son could not accept the fact that the man who was an example of him breathing with strength and health was now much shorter and timidly thinner, turning into an unrecognizable copy of his former self. He tried not to be strict with his father, but furious thoughts sometimes showed on his face, with minute eyebrows and a wry smile. The conversation between relatives turned out to be difficult. Jack asked his daughter to play a little in his room and kissed her, urging her not to be afraid. In prison, I lost heart. I couldn't find the strength to move on. Everyone reproached himself for what happened to our family. Peter explained through tears. I have no forgiveness. I can't rely on him. But my thoughts were always with you. I got sick a lot in prison, becoming a frequent visitor to the infirmary. And as he left, he reached for the bottle. How I wanted to drink all these years. The elderly man admitted that he had completely fallen. After his release, he lived without a purpose, with no hope of becoming a full-fledged member of society again. Work didn't go well. None of the old acquaintances were in a hurry to help, turned away when requested. So Peter got angry, flooding hopelessness with alcohol, began to wander, begging on the street, enough only here for a bottle and snacks. I don't have my own housing, nailing it here and there. I earned an ulcer there. How do they survive? After listening to his father's unhappy story for almost 20 years, Jack sighed heavily, realizing how hard it was for him. He lost his wife and son. Confidence in yourself, your tomorrow. The man did not have the moral strength to restore in society, and he did not want to appear helpless and rotten inside in front of the child. Jack wanted to tell more about himself, to prove that he achieved everything he dreamed of, regardless of the circumstances. I wanted to brag about my family's career and financial well-being, but then he would look stupid. This is not how Alma and Peter raised him. We will carry out the operation soon. He spoke in such a tone that Peter would not think of refusing. Otherwise you will perish. and I just introduced you to my daughter." When it was already completely dark outside and the conversations became less tense, Jack realized that he could not let his father go outside. Who will he be after this, allowing him to be homeless after so many years of separation? "No, what are you?" "I can't stay," Pavel protested loudly, feeling like a burden. He knew his son was a decent man. Out of a sense of duty, he will not leave him. "Do not argue. The wife will understand. I will tell her everything." Annie found out about everything by phone and was not upset when she found out about the guests in their apartment. She was more worried about the moral state of her husband, who never let go of the thought of reuniting with his father. "Do you think he can be trusted? If you offer him a job, will he be ready to return to normal life? Or will he immediately run for a bottle?" the woman asked, tired, finding a couple of minutes to rest. "I don't know," Jack answered honestly. "I will do what is in my power. I will treat him and arrange at least to our clinic. And there is his choice. Don't be afraid. I won't let him take money from us and cause trouble. But he's not that kind of person. Now we are strangers, but I knew him before." Having passed the tests and passed the necessary operational examination, Peter was ready to say goodbye to the disease. And the operation was done by Jack's colleague. He himself did not enter the operating room. Everything went smoothly until the man needed a blood transfusion. The blood type was rare, and Peter's son stated that he had the same. "You know what this means?" they asked him in the laboratory. "It is quite possible that you may turn out to be blood relatives." Jack didn't need to be reminded of that. He immediately thought of it himself. After consulting with his wife, he decided to order a DNA test in the laboratory. His results confirmed the suspicions. The man turned out to be Peter's son. "I don't understand anything," he muttered, feeling Annie's hand on his elbow, who rushed to support him. Annie looked over his shoulder and opened her mouth in surprise. "Well, how? You were born into a different family. Only one person can know the answer." Jack was impatient to talk to his father, but attacks him with questions immediately after the operation. It was stupid. In the ward, his daughter-in-law, son and granddaughter were waiting for his awakening. "Welcome back," Anne said with a smile as she greeted the awakened Peter. "Hello." Jack sat on his father's bed and touched his hand. "Everything went well. But you'd better rest for now. We will leave you. If needed, ask the nurse to send me." The man endured several days before turning to his father for the truth. He still didn't believe they were related. After meeting with his son, Peter wanted to tell everything, but did not dare. Their relationship has only improved, and he is not yet prepared for a new shock. "I'm sorry that you again found yourself in such a situation through my fault," an elderly man said bitterly. "We had an affair with your mother, Nicole. We met by chance. She was then unmarried, and I married to Irma. She never knew my secrets. I didn't have the courage to confess. My poor Irma, how much did she get? I never looked at other women. Having married, he thought up diversity and other nonsense. Everything happened by itself." Peter said that Nicole, in her youth, tried to avoid her father's strict supervision, looking for a suitable match for her marriage. Although she followed his wishes, she wanted more freedom and often ran away from home to walk around the city herself, to get to know life, to get some experience, and not to obey all the time. First to Dad, and then to her husband. She knew that when she got married, she would not have such an opportunity. It will be impossible to throw out anything that casts a shadow on the family. The girl loved to wander along unfamiliar streets, dine in beautiful places, admire the play of street musicians in the squares, and fed poor animals. Once 2 guys got involved for her, who persistently showed their desire to get acquainted with a home girl who did not know even half of the words that those guys uttered. Such a meeting was a horror. She did not know how to get rid of the persecution, so she asked for help from a young man walking towards her. It turned out to be, I recalled the moments of Peter's youth to beat off the hope of the scoundrels. It did not take much strength. I liked her immediately, and she liked me. I can't describe the feelings she evoked in me. I have always been thoughtful, but in her presence for a day he could not think clearly, couldn't refuse it. She started running towards me. We had to hide from prying eyes so as not to bring trouble. Realizing the depravity of their relationship, the lovers still decided to break off their relationship. In addition, Nicole's father found her a groom and had already agreed on the bride. At that moment, she found out that she was expecting a child. It was terrible to disgrace the honor of the family. But the young woman did not hide the truth from the groom. Respecting him, from the first meeting, William was fascinated by the ease of brevity of the bride, and therefore forgave her everything. But on the condition that from now on she would obey him in everything. There was more in nobility than in me. I could not stand the separation, and deliberately became close to William, so that sometimes I could visit them and see her. She was horrified when she first met me in the dining room of her house. Nicole did not want to listen to me, avoided being alone, and remained faithful to her husband in the future. When I learned that William was raising my own son, I could not stop visiting, hoping to see you at least sometimes. Watch as you grow. That's why I was eager to adopt you, so that we could finally be together. I couldn't let strangers take you away. And I never confessed. It had hurt her badly. But she loved you with all her heart. My confession could spoil the relationship between all of us. I saw how attached you are to each other. The fact that Peter turned out to be Jack's own father seemed incredible to him, but he could not believe it. How did it happen? His sweet, tender mother, vague memories that still remained in the depths of his memory. She was unhappy with William, whom the man considered his father. Perhaps earlier he would have condemned this relationship, would not have understood his blood parents, but from the height of his years he did not throw accusations. He himself got a difficult fate, and he did not believe that he could judge someone else's. I know it's too much for you. After all your life you considered the father of another person, Peter said with a guilty look. No, what are you? Stopped his son. I'm surprised, but it was you who raised me. You were close to me. Didn't leave me when I was orphaned. If you didn't care, you'd leave me in the care of the state. The older man burst into tears from the surge of emotion. Pride for his son and regret for the lost years when he did not contact Jack clashed inside him. He did not deserve such a son because he lost his faith. He left the guy to rely only on his own strength. But I keep your letters, son. I know them by heart. Jack hugged his father, feeling how to protect us from the incoming tears. Even if earlier he held a grudge against him, not admitting it, but now he realized that he was ready to leave it in the past. He would never leave his father, not now that he had found him again. He grew up a long time ago, became independent, and became the head of his own family. He was pleased with the presence of a loved one nearby. With him, he could again feel like a child, needed and carefree. How to combine memories of the old days when Mom was still alive. After being discharged, Peter tried to be helpful, cleaning up the apartment while the kids were at work. He fiddled with his granddaughter, took her to preparatory courses for school, made puzzles and riddles. From the quivering friendship of grandfather and granddaughter, Laurie's parents were touched by photographing them together. The girl really liked her grandfather. She quickly became attached to him and now wanted to walk more with him than with Dad. I also felt close to him when I was adopted. Jack nodded, walking towards his father. He always knew how to charm. All the neighborhood kids were like that. Ask us to go fishing. Their fathers did not have the patience to calmly explain something to the boys, and Dad never raised his voice. He knew how to interest. Maybe we shouldn't call the nanny yet, Anne suggested, seeing that Peter's daughter was in safe hands. You're right, he's a real family man. What's a great idea? I think they will both be happy. Finding separate housing for Peter was out of the question. Jack's family was so used to a relative that they did not want to part with him. He himself was afraid to be a burden, thinking that he could let his son down if he relaxed. After meeting with his family, he no longer drank a drop of alcohol. He had a powerful incentive to quit. He regained a cozy home and family ties that he would not trade for anything. "Son, did you say that you would help with the work? I think it's time. I am quite strong and can be useful." Father started a conversation a few months later. During this time, he really began to feel healthier and lighter. Having given up alcohol and regularly eating healthy food, he gained normal weight and was confident in his own abilities. "I can talk to colleagues. There is a place for a nurse in our clinic. Will you go?" "I'll go," Peter waved his hand. "Everything will fit me, and it will be convenient to get to work together." Peter went to the clinic and quickly got used to the new place. During his imprisonment, he had to do a lot of hard work, without the opportunity to rest. So the work in the clinic seemed to him heavenly. Colleagues easily accepted him into their company, with interest listening to the stories with which he liked to share. One day in the elevator, Peter crossed paths with Tina, the head nurse. The woman has been widowed for a long time. The children lived in another city and rarely visited. The only consolation was video calls, when she could watch her grandchildren grow up. "Yes, what is it?" She was indignant under her breath, entering the elevator with the phone, a useless piece of metal. "Excuse me, can I help?" Peter found what the problem was and fixed the problem on the woman's smartphone in no time. "Oh, thank you very much. I don't understand anything about this newfangled technology." Daughter and husband gave and did not really explain how to use. "My pleasure. I myself am. Granddaughter at the age of 7 on you with any device that falls into the hand." From that moment on, Peter and Tina got to know each other in the hustle and bustle of the clinic. Sometimes they didn't meet on the computer and could have lunch together, conspiring so much that colleagues had to bring them back to reality. The romance between them began easily and without unnecessary worries. Both were free, already had adult children. Why should they be ashamed now? "I didn't think that in my old age I would be lucky to meet a woman like you," Peter said quietly to his chosen one. "You won't refuse to meet my family. Let's have dinner." True, they are both doctors, and it will be problematic to get together at the same time. Yes, we are already all gossip. There is nothing to hide, Tina agreed, but nevertheless was delighted with the offer. It's high time. On the eve of the new year, Jack's apartment was filled with hustle and bustle of children's laughter, the rustle of gift wrapping, and the smell of tangerines. The children of Tina and Peter met under the same roof to meet and learn from their parents about their desire to get married. The audience greeted the news with applause, whistles and a toast for the audience, for the happiness of the future bride and groom.